Hey there, Julia Gentry here, and today we're going to be talking about problems. How many of you can admit you got a problem? There is a problem that you are facing, and for the last day, week, month, year, you have been banging your head against the wall because you don't know how to solve this problem. Now, we have problems on many different levels. Some of us would say we see these macro problems like the economy, or if you're in real estate, the real estate market has all of a sudden halted, or suicide, anxiety, depression, it's at an all-time high. Like we're watching the news and at a macro level, we're like, we have a problem. Or maybe today you have a micro problem that feels gigantic, right? These micro problems could look like you go to a church that just kind of feels like it's asleep, right? Or there's some obesity in your family and you just can't seem to lose the weight, or the people around you can't seem to lose the weight. Or your bank account. We talk about that, like you have more month than money in the bank account. Or you're in conflict with someone. There is someone in your life right now that you are not seeing eye to eye, nor are you handling the confrontation well. So it's probably safe to say that all of us today have a problem. So, what we're not going to talk about is the fact that we are all alone in this and you're the only one that has a problem. What we're going to do today is we're going to actually unpack a better way to approach and solve our problems, because it's never a matter of if we're going to have them, it's a matter of how we're going to attack them and solve them. Okay. Now, I think that it's also fair to notate that generally it's not the problem that is causing the riff in our spirits. It's not the problem that's causing us to hyperact or overcompensate or run or hide or avoid. It's generally the mindset that we have about it, right? Like it's our perspective. But what happens is I start to focus on the problem, so much so because I think that that means something is wrong in general. And then I start to spin, right? So if we go back to any one of those problems, the economy, your bank account, confrontation with a loved one, the fact that your church, just like it's not on fire, and we start to spin. And so we start to actually do all of these things that only emphasize the problem. Like we're not actually solving it, we're making it bigger, right? Because we're avoiding it. We're popping another pill, we're having another glass of wine, we're acting like it just isn't happening, right? Or we're like waging war and we're fighting back and we're resisting it, only to end up exhausted and tired and depleted. And we literally are convinced that there should be no problems. And now we're annoyed and mad that we even have them. And we start to blame other people. We're blaming the government. We're blaming the president. We're blaming God for all of these problems. But let's actually set the record straight, because in theory, this was not the original design, right? When God created the earth, the original design was perfection, right? It says that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the whole earth was formless and empty. And darkness was covering the whole world, right? But the Spirit was hovering over the surface of the deep. And then with his spoken word, God says, let there be light. And the Bible says, and there was light. This already tells us right at the gate that the power of our spoken word is so important that if we are following in our Creator's footsteps, that with a spoken word, we can speak anything into existence, including more problems. But he says in the beginning, I'm going to say, let there be light in the midst of the darkness, which I find to be super fascinating, that he didn't create the mountains or man or the waters or anything else in darkness and let the light be last, like this grand finale. He spoke to the darkness first, and then there was light, which probably gives us, again, another note that we should be paying attention to, which is we are here to speak light to the darkest of problems. You see where I'm going with this already? Already, as God goes to create, there's darkness. He creates light. He speaks light into the darkness because he knows that light will override the darkness every single time. That was a side note. That is free for you right there. Okay, so the original design is perfection. Then he goes through the right day 2, day 3, day 4. He's creating the mountains and the sea and the animals, and then he creates man in his image, and then he creates woman, and he says, "You are now perfect together," right? And in this perfection, he also, being such an amazing, gracious God, gives us free will. He says, "Hey, don't eat of that tree; you will surely die." Though I am in charge of this whole thing because I am God, I'm not in control of what you will or won't do. But here are my promises that will keep you in perfect peace and total freedom. And if you decide to do something different, it will cause chaos. Sin will cause defeat, destruction, and death. He gives us free will. Now, here's another free note, no extra charge. That God is a God that is in charge, but he's not in control. And freedom is actually not the fact that I have enough money in the bank to last me forever, or that there will never be any pain or suffering. It's actually simply choice. Freedom is found in our choice. And so when God gives us the ability to choose what we're going to do, he's basically saying, I'm going to set you free, but then it's going to be your job to stay free. And if anyone has ever struggled and overcome an addiction, you know it is one thing to get free and it's another to stay free. And so God actually walks us through this process of he's given us the stage to say, hey, you are free. Now it's on you to stay free, right? So here's what we have to know. Now we've been given the choice to stay free. However, Adam and Eve give us the perfect picture of us choosing not freedom, choosing instant gratification, choosing something that from our ego and our pride and our small confines of the mind, that if I eat this, if I do this, if I have more, if I make more money, then I will be successful, more significant, more powerful. The sad part about this is that God had already given us everything we needed, and yet we still thought we needed more. So we choose something less than. We choose temporary fixes. We choose something that could just solve our problem right now. We choose something that could fulfill us for a momentary gratification, and in walks sin. In walks sin. In walks the thing that ultimately is going to now try to rob you and I forevermore, which is one, our wrong choices and our sin. But then number two, the problem. We got problems now. Sin introduces problems, chaos, division, economy, bad leadership, conflict, anger, suicide, anxiety, depression. All of those things are not from God. They are not sent from heaven. They are not allowed in heaven. They are what happens on this side of earth because we chose something outside of freedom. Here's what I need you to know about the problem. That means problems, unfortunately, are a way of life. They are a way of life. Even if we look at, in the Bible, let's just go there now, John 16:33, reading from the Amplified Version. It says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have perfect peace. In me, he says. In the world you have tribulation of distress and suffering, but be courageous, be confident, be undaunted, be filled with joy, because I have overcome the world. My conquest is accomplished. My victory is abiding. We could just stay and sit right there on that. In the world you have tribulation, distress, and suffering. What Jesus is already saying is it's going to be a part of life. It is what it is, what it is. You will see problems. You will have problems. You will cause problems. You will be the bystander of other people causing problems, period. That doesn't make you wrong. That doesn't mean you're the only one. That doesn't make it easier. It's just a baseline of our understanding. So when we start to see these problems, I want you to start saying, oh, hey, this is to be expected. And you're going to take a deep breath. You're going to remember, I've already told you these things. My perfect peace is not going to then be found in a perfect world. My perfect peace is found in God. And suffering, distress, tribulation is par for the course. All right, set the stage. Then it says, in the world, and be courageous, be confident, be undaunted, and be filled with joy. How am I to do that? Because I have overcome the world. My conquest is accomplished. My victory is abiding. What does that mean? It means, number one, when you see a problem, You have to rest in knowing, par for the course. Write that down. Number one, when I see a problem, it's par for the course. It's part of this life. Doesn't mean I'm wrong, doesn't mean I'm bad, doesn't mean that this is my forever. It just means it's a baseline of my understanding. Number one. Number two, it means that when I see a problem, I have to now understand that my joy, my immovability, my ability to be undaunted in my stance is because he has already conquered the world. The conquest is accomplished. The victory is already had, and now I have to abide in the fact that I am living from victory. You should write that down. Number two, when I see a problem, I have to execute through this problem from a place of victory. It's already done. I need to rest in the assurance that God's got this. He knew the beginning from the end. The minute that he made the world and spoke it into existence, he knew the end game and he knew everything in between. He was very well aware. So this problem did not catch God off guard. It caught me off guard. It caught you off guard. It caught the world off guard. It did not catch God off guard. Well, why does God allow this to happen? Rewind. Because he's in charge, he's not in control. And someone else along the line decided to get out of freedom, the freedom lane, and decided to make a bad decision. Makes him human. We're not going to accommodate for it, but makes him human. So as we see the problem, par for the course. Number two, however you want to do that. Number two, I have to actually look at this from a place of victory. God, give me your revelation. Here's the problem. No money in the bank, conflict, suicide, anxiety, depression, churches mediocre. Here's the problem. God, what do you say about this? When was the last time we asked that? I get that there's fear. I get that there's real estate has come to a halt. I get that we have a lot of questions. I get that we're facing cancer. I get that there's anxiety and depression. I live in the same world that you do. I'm wondering, when was the last time we got on our knees and we said, God, what do you say about this? What's his perspective? What does done look like? What does heaven say about this? What is heaven doing about this? Right? Because then it's going to lead us to number three. Once I understand these things, then what I have to do is I have to decide, is this part of my job to do something here? Any of us have a problem. Everybody complains about it. And a small percentage of people actually decide, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to stop complaining at Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm actually going to do something about this problem. Jesus gives us the greatest command, which is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. But then he gives us the greatest commission, which is found in Matthew 28, even titled the Great Commission. It says, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always. What is he telling us to do? Go! Do something. Do something. He even says to the disciples, not only do I want you to do something literally, not only do I want you to go and baptize and go and teach and go and speak heaven on this side of eternity, he also says, when you're praying, I also want you to pray from heaven's perspective. Remember, it says, here's how you're going to pray. Our Father dwelling in the heavenly realms, may the glory of your name be the center point on which our lives turn. Manifest your kingdom realm and cause every purpose to be fulfilled on earth as it is fulfilled in heaven. We're actually commissioned to pray like it matters and to do something like it matters, which means I have to have, number two, heaven's perspective so I can do what heaven is doing and pray what heaven is saying. This is how we conquer our problems. Is number one, we recognize we will have them. Number two is to align with what heaven says about the problem, to get in the word, to get in prayer, to get in a small community, to go, hey, I'm seeing anxiety rise in my community. I'm seeing our church fall asleep. I'm seeing my marriage slowly go to mediocrity. I'm watching my kids struggling with drugs and alcohol. I don't believe that this is what heaven is doing. So God, community, church, the Bible. Help me to understand, God, what are you saying about this? When I have that revelation, then I can tackle number 3, which is basically to say, what's my job in this then? What am I going to do? Is there an organization I can partner with? Does this mean it's a starting point for me to get something done? Do I need to shift lanes? Do I need to quit my job and start something new? Do I need to get on my knees in prayer? What do I need to do about the problem? What our world needs is a people to arise and not be unaware or in denial of the problems or what's going on. We just need to be sharpened to understand more of what is heaven doing and how can I partner with what heaven is doing to make sure that while I'm alive, my earth, my community, my family, my business looks like heaven. And until the day I die, that will be my commission. Well, but Julia, what if I don't see it in this lifetime? You might not. Abraham didn't, right? Abraham was given a promise that he would be the father of many nations. 400 years later, thousands of years later, right? Like the guy doesn't get to see the full revelation of that promise. Because remember, the promise and the dream is not just about you in your lifetime, it's eternal. It is so much bigger. And I want you to hear me. I know the problem you're facing today is hard. I know that it's hard. And you will overcome when you recognize the problem is here. It's par for the course. What is heaven doing? And how can I get a clear revelation of what God and the Bible is saying about this problem? And then 3, what can I do about it? How can I partner with what heaven is doing? How can I partner with my organizations around me? How can I have the courage to start building, to start moving, to start actually building heaven on earth? This is how we overcome micro and macro problems. One day at a time, we decide to start, and one day at a time, we decide to not quit. And then day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, we will renew our minds and He will renew our strength and we will rise on wings like eagles. Why? Because we recognize that it is Him in us, that there is an abiding victory to what is going on, and we just need to surrender and say yes. So join me today as we tackle problems at a micro and macro level from a whole new perspective that will actually light the world on fire and make this side of heaven look more like it. Until next time. Oh, and of course, don't forget, like, subscribe, pass this along to someone that you know you've been in communication with that has a problem. You know that person I'm talking about. Remember yesterday at the coffee shop? Or remember the other day when you were sitting there having a beer? Or the other night when you're complaining to your spouse, which makes you human, totally get it. But you know those people who have that problem? Send them this video.